Thanks to the likes of Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, Greta Thunberg, and a complicit news media, children are getting what's called eco-anxiety. They're having panic attacks, they're feeling depressed, angry. Greta Thunberg is not necessarily an anomaly. I mean, she is in the sense that she's very famous, travels the world, and preaches about the end of the world because she's been fed all of this insane religious nonsense, but it's resulting in other kids feeling the same way. In an op-ed for the Daily Mail, Douglas Murray writes, "Terrifying our children with doom-mongering propaganda on climate change is nothing less than abuse. Have your children got eco-anxiety? How would you know if they had?" Now, here's the thing. I always start these videos by pointing out, for one, biological gender or sex, whatever you want to call it, is a real thing, okay? And climate change is a serious problem. However, the problem I have with Greta Thunberg is exemplified almost exactly like this in this article. I remember I lived in Los Angeles a long time ago. This is back before, I think it was like 2012 or whatever. And some religious zealot was buying billboards that said, "Are you prepared for the end? The end is nigh. It'll come on this date." And when the date came and nothing happened, sure enough, they just changed the date. I thought it was hilarious. And so did many of my friends. Except now when you talk to those same friends in LA about climate change, they're saying the same things, and it's mind-numbing to me. "The world will end in 12 years, they screech. 8 years, says Greta Thunberg. Then when you call them out, they say, "We were just exaggerating." Yeah, well, children don't know that you're exaggerating. So Ocasio-Cortez has been slammed because she said the world's going to end in 12 years. Greta Thunberg, I think, said 8. And then what happened was apparently it was pulled out of context. You know, Ocasio-Cortez is angry because she was saying that what she was really trying to say, she was quoting this climate change report that said we have 12 years to make a change. Otherwise, there will be irreversible damage. Perhaps there already is irreversible damage. It's really hard to quantify. That's what makes this so challenging. The day-to-day things we experience in terms of weather and stuff, it's not really shocking or jarring to anybody because it happens very, very slowly. Now, there is this well-known meteorologist on Twitter. I forget his name, so forgive me. If you're the meteorologist, forgive me. I could be, promoting your Twitter, but he says, no, the world is not going to end in 12 years. Calm down. He also criticized AOC for confusing weather with climate. Ocasio-Cortez was in D.C. Okay, she's there for Congress, and tornado sirens go off, and she tweets like, "This is the new normal, tornadoes in D.C." And it's like, this is the kind of psychotic fear-mongering in line with these lunatic 2012 doom preachers of old, where it's like, dude, do you not realize there's a reason why there are tornado alarms in D.C.? It's because tornadoes can happen. They didn't one day say, because of climate change, we're going to install, tornado sirens. There are tornado sirens in Chicago. And when was the last time Chicago had a real tornado? I mean, like the city proper. I grew up there, and there was some stuff in the suburbs. People got freaked out. Tornadoes, appear overhead, and they don't really ever touch down, but we have them. Are we going to complain about that? No, but AOC does. See, every little thing, even Greta Thunberg with Australia, it's like everything they see around every corner is lurking, the evil sun ray trapped by greenhouse gases, lurking around every corner, jumping out, wow, and doing scares at you. When these people who preach to the youth, like Greta Thunberg and AOC, and all of their accomplices, okay, are screeching about this insanity, kids are going nuts. So how about I actually read this? Because you can hear me rant. Douglas Murray writes, according to a variety of psychologists and psychiatrists, talk of climate crisis has led to an upsurge of young people reporting feelings of anxiety, helplessness, and guilt. The symptoms of this newly coined syndrome are real enough, according to the Royal College of Psychiatrists. And why wouldn't they be in a world pumped full of one-sided propaganda? We saw this over Christmas when Channel 4 screened a special edition of Gogglebox called Goggles Progs. What is that? I don't know. That's a British thing, I'd imagine, which featured viewers as young as 6. The children were shown watching as the BBC parroted untrue claims by Extinction Rebellion that scientists say we have only 11 years to act, and their response was all too understandable. One child looked especially pained as she counted on her fingers how many years she had left to live and worked out that, according to the BBC, the world could end when she was just 19. Again, it was in North Hollywood. Okay, this is in the Valley. Okay, if you're not familiar with Los Angeles, you've got basically like this hilly range that separates the actual LA County, and then there's the Valley, right? San Fernando Valley. And North Hollywood is an area where my friends lived. And there was this big billboard I remember seeing when we were going to the bar. And this is back in, I think, like 2011. And it said, the end is nigh. And I laughed at it. So why are they now doing the same thing? The end is not nigh. And I'll also make one really, really important point to all the egotistical, climate people who think the world is ending. Let me just stress this point. The world will not end. Humans might make life, bad for humans. And I think it's a fair point. If you want to criticize what humanity is doing in terms of pollution, toxification of the oceans, and how this is going to be bad for humanity in the long run, that's the conversation we should be having. But the world is not going to end. We're not going to burst into flames and everyone will die. It's just not going to happen, okay? It is extremely arrogant and egotistical to think that you have such an impact. Now, I do think the collective actions of humanity will definitely and is definitely having an impact on the planet. According to the scientists, does that mean the world is going to end in the next, 10 years? No. Now, I'll be fair. They say that was taken out of context. I'm pretty sure Greta Thunberg said we had 8 years to act or something, but fine. I'll play fair. Those are taken out of context. It's not even true that we only have 10 years to act, and I will tell you this. The date keeps changing. Just like that sign I saw in North Hollywood, and then after the date came and nothing happened, a new sign popped up saying, here's the real date. Remember in 2000? We have 10 years to act. In 1990, we have 10 years to act. They keep saying the same thing over and over again, okay? Look, man, I get it. We need to focus on new technology, but we need to incentivize the market to make these changes, and we can do this with the help of government. This is not helping. This is creating a zealous religion. Like these kids are growing up being preached to by doomsayers. Could you imagine if that crazy guy who bought the billboard or the dude in the corner holding up a sign saying the end is nigh in the street with a crazy beard screeching, rah, rah, rah. Could you imagine they put him on TV, paraded him around the UN screeching about, the apocalypse is here, the horsemen are rising? Yeah, people would be like, young people would be like, whoa, this is crazy. But the thing is, we know those people are nuts. We tell our kids, they're crazy. But then Greta Thunberg gets up. She's 17. She has no idea what's going on in the world. She didn't even go to school. She's skipping school. I don't know if she's back in school, but her whole point, the whole thing about what she's doing is she's not going to school. So listen, I understand. Let me stop right there. Immediately all the leftists are screaming, Tim Pool, you're a high school dropout. I agree. I certainly am. And so I defer to the experts when they say the world is not ending. Okay. Greta Thunberg acts like she knows everything. This is why it's happening. We demand action now. Do you realize if we took action based on what Greta Thunberg and AOC wanted, like millions of people would die? Yeah, because we heat our homes with fossil fuels. Not every home, but we do use electricity. But guess what? A good portion of our electricity is made from coal. Not all of it, but I think more than half. Anyway, let's read more because I'm going off on a tangent. They say later, a little boy reacted to the fanatical claims of Extinction Rebellion by saying to the viewers, that's sad. Why did we have to be born at this time? Yikes. We are in an era where things are better than ever. We've cured many diseases. We're at the height of antibiotics. It's kind of scary because there's antibiotic resistance. You can go on the internet and watch any TV show, any song. Man, it's glorious today. In my pocket, I contain I possess a small device that contains or allows me access to the summation of human knowledge. Truly, a golden age. And that device allows me to hear music and talk to people and communicate around the world. Yet people are saying, these kids, why were we born in this time? You were born in a glorious, beautiful, golden era, child. Don't freak out. They are growing up, of course, in a world where Greta Thunberg is preaching her gospel of imminent hellfire and in which world leaders queue up to approve her message. It's religious. It really is. Look, here's the problem. There's real reason to believe climate change is a threat to humanity. You would be, in my opinion, insane not to think we can't toxify and pollute our own environment. We have the micro effects of this: polluted rivers becoming acidic, infected with E. coli. In Chicago, like you can't even go in the lake sometimes because of the disease in the water. And there was this. I worked for a nonprofit. They surveyed people at the beach in Lake Michigan. They're artificial beaches, by the way. It's a lake. It's fresh water. And this is going to get gross, so I'm giving you a warning. But they surveyed people, asked them how they felt, how was their diet, how were they, I'm doing air quotes, regular in terms of particular bowel movements. I kid you not, they really did this. And then following up a few days after the beach, they found a ridiculous amount of people ended up getting sick, okay, in terms of, having to run to the washroom. I'm trying to be a bit family friendly. But yeah, so listen, I understand there's a big difference between climate change, global warming, climate crisis, whatever you want to call it, and someone getting sick at the beach because of an E. coli contaminant. The point I'm making is that we can see how pollution affects the ocean with dead zones. We can see how it affects, smaller areas, chemical disasters, cancer rates, and things like that. Scale that up, okay? The fact is, I'm not saying the world's ending, by no means. I'm saying humans play a role, and it's very important we protect our environment. The problem I have with these people is that they're making these kids lose their minds, and they're pushing ideas that, well, are just plain nuts and are not going to help solve the problem. In fact, they'll make the problem worse. Let me explain something to all of you. If you happen to be a climate eco, individual who likes Greta Thunberg and all that stuff, you're probably mad at me. If you've made it this far, I'm impressed. But let me just explain something to you. When you see that preacher on the side of the road or in the billboard saying, December, 16th, 2021, that's when the end happens, Jesus will return, and you think that person's crazy, that's exactly how people feel when they see Greta Thunberg. And that's why I've jokingly called it the Greta Thunberg challenge, See what happens if you walk up to a stranger and scowl and yell, "How dare you, stolen my childhood." See how they respond to you. They're going to freak out. It's nuts. And how do you think kids are going to react to this? They're growing up and they're being driven insane by zealotry. It's not going to solve the problem. It's not going to produce activists who actually want to fix things. You know what it is? I kid you not, it's going to be market incentives. And I think the government can play a role in awarding contracts to successful innovation and inventions that in renewable energy. And we're doing it. Maybe we could do it better. Maybe we could do it faster. That's a fact. The problem is human growth as of today was built upon fossil fuels over the past 100 years. And your option right now is cut off the valve, millions die, or wean ourselves off it over a short period of time. I think we wean ourselves off it for a variety of reasons. The problem is Greta Thunberg says, shut it down now. I'm going to Davos, the World Economic Forum, where the top 1% of the 1% of the 1% are meeting, because she's a privileged elite who has all of the luxury in the world. She got to travel across the Atlantic Ocean in a yacht with all this donated tech. And she's going like, this is the funniest thing to me. When she's like, it's a zero emission journey to the UN. And it's like, dude, do you have any idea how expensive that trip was? It is peak luxury. The richest people in the world yelling at the poor people struggling to survive who want to use a little oil to heat their home. And they're saying, turn it off. Meanwhile, they're in massive yachts saying, look at me. I'm not using emissions. I will give respect to Greta Thunberg for going that far. I really will. Because a lot of people complain about Leonardo DiCaprio flying around in private jets. You don't need to fly around a private jet. You can fly commercial. But Greta Thunberg still deserves, I don't want to necessarily say disrespect, right? I respect that she was willing to do this zero emission trip. But the point is, it's not possible for everyone else. It is the height of luxury and privilege to use all of this new tech that isn't being reproduced for everyone, and then complaining that the governments need to shut off fossil fuels because poor people heat their homes. You see the problem there? So again, I respect Greta Thunberg for taking the zero emission trip, but it's not replicable. You cannot have everyone who needs to fly in the thousands of flights per day floating around on yachts for 2 weeks. It's just ridiculous. Let's read a little bit more. They say this. Supposedly, serious politicians like to pretend that what the Swedish teenager is saying, we're all about to die, is true. That her proposed response, destroy the free market capitalism, is reasonable, and people who ought to know better are trying to outdo each other in hysteria. The results are hardly surprising. In recent weeks alone, a number of friends have told me of children feeling depressed or listless because they are falling for the lies of these abusers who claim that young people have no chance of ever growing up. One mother recently described how her daughter had asked what the point was in taking their GCSEs, I'm assuming it's a test, if they weren't even going to be here a few years later. Wow. You might have thought that rather than whip them up still further, any remaining adults in the room should offer children the perspective and insight that age might bring. But I have been repeatedly struck by how few people there are willing to take up that role. Meanwhile, cynical politicians such as Jeremy Corbyn and anyone who aspires to lead the Lib Dems have played a huge role. They have spotted a cynical opportunity to appeal to young voters and latch onto the issue, giving the claims of Extinction Rebellion great weight in the eyes of the young and impressionable. Too many of us kowtow to children or treat them as some special source of truth. Yet the reason why so many are becoming ill with anxiety is precisely because so many adults in a position to know better are telling them that they should be terrified. Take a headline from the BBC website last summer. Quote, climate change, 12 years to save the planet? Make that 18 months. Oh, we went down. Right. 18 months. This kind of scaremongering is so commonplace that it barely registers. Most of us lost count of the number of eco-doomsday deadlines we have passed, as in headlines. Yet we are still here. In 2000, the now defunct independent newspaper ran a story claiming that within a few years, children in countries such as ours were not going to know what snow was. 2 years later, the anti-capitalist activist George Monbiot was using the pages of The Guardian to claim there would be famine within 10 years unless we all gave up eating meat, fish, and dairy products. Well, 2010 came and went, but most Britons remained well-fed. In fact, we've got obesity problems. We got too much food. How about one thing we can do is grow less food? I don't know. It's not really, I don't know, I don't know how you solve that problem. The paper, they say this 2 years later, the Guardian was warning that climate change would cause millions of deaths in succeeding years. The paper went so far as to warn that by 2020, Britain would be plunged into a Siberian climate. I need hardly say that we are not yet staggering around an Arctic wasteland wearing bearskins. But that was always the way with climate alarmists. One day we were going to never see snow again. The next we were due to be covered in this stuff. And all the time we were expected to trust them and destroy the economy on their wobbly say-so. Greta Thunberg recently said in an op-ed that it's really about ending patriarchy and colonialism and all this other stupid nonsense. That's what it is. They're scaring you with whatever they can to force you to join their religion. That's how religion works, okay? Now listen, if you happen to be religious, I myself am, I don't know how to describe my own personal religious views, but suffice it to say, I do believe in God. I have for a really long time. People probably assume I'm like a secular atheist. That's not the case. But I'm absolutely non-theistic. I don't look to any of the traditional religions for guidance or anything like that. I have my own weird philosophical beliefs on religion. I think it would be great for a conversation I might have in my new show. But you look at I look at what these climate alarmists are doing, and they're creating sin. You know, like it is very much in line. It's not about climate. I'm talking about intersectionality, right? You're an oppressor. You're a colonialist. All this other stuff. They're creating a fear of hellfire and coming doom, and they're using science and climate to trick people. They then tell you must bend the knee and do as they say and abolish capitalism. They really do. Listen, capitalism is not the problem. All right. People like to point out that, Greta Thunberg says your fantasies about endless growth just shows that we should not be listening to children. Right now, the digital economy is expanding. OK, the amount of carbon emissions I produce from making a product based on my thoughts and opinions, or better yet, the economic expansion of making a little mobile game where you golf with your finger and you spend $2 to buy an intangible T-bonus that gives you an extra oomph in your next swing. A lot of the economy is becoming virtual. We are not producing more products in the physical world. We're producing access to digital resources for games and things like that. It's possible. Now, it's true that the internet infrastructure does contribute a lot of carbon emissions. It uses a lot of power. It's very hot, all these things. But it is an economy being built not upon physical products, waste, and plastics, for instance. It's going to be an ever more efficient internet where a large portion of the economy is becoming completely sustainable because they're digital assets. Well, I shouldn't say completely, but very much so. You want to talk about infinite economic growth? Let's talk about digital space, virtual spaces. When someone buys real estate on a website, it's theoretically infinite. So it is entirely possible to have not infinite growth, but sustained growth outside of the physical world. She's a child. She doesn't understand. Well, she's a teenager. Okay, that's unfair because I routinely rag on her for her going, I am a child. Leave me alone. I'm making that up. She never said that. The point I'm making is she tweets about how, like, we're children, we understand we're taking big risks. Like, you're 17, dude. You're basically an adult. Anyway, the point is, she has no idea what she's talking about. She's young, naive. She was raised on this psychotic doomsaying of doom preachers about the end coming, and it never came. Yet they still believe it. I tell you this, and I mean this with all respect to the religions of the world. To me, it's the same thing as the religions I've experienced. Okay, I grew up. I went to Catholic school. I have seen it's religion. So ultimately, I think we have a serious problem in that. You know, in the United States, we have a separation of church and state, but we don't have a separation of ideology and state. How do you even do that? I honestly don't know. But I will tell you this. I'll wrap this one up. This one it went long. If our kids are being raised to believe this psychotic nonsense, we already have eco-extremists. They exist. There's going to be more. There's going to be more people. Like, so I'll give you a good example. Ocasio-Cortez says we eventually want to replace airplanes with high-speed rail. Now, a lot of people have exaggerated saying she was trying to abolish airplanes. No, she wrote in the FAQ for the Green New Deal, we can't get rid of planes fast enough and replace them with high-speed rail. So she does want high-speed rail. A lot of people have advocated that it's more efficient in a lot of ways. Yet in the UK, they are literally trying to build a high-speed rail to reduce their carbon emissions, and eco-activists have blocked the path, refusing to allow them to build it. So I tell you this, what do they really want? I don't know. Maybe they really do want a nuclear apocalypse to go back to living in caves. But how can we live in a world where the environmental activists are simultaneously saying we need high-speed rail and then blocking it when they try to build it in the UK? It doesn't make sense. These people are zealots who believe insane things for insane reasons, and they're teaching kids these insane things. And the kids think the world is going to end, and they're losing their minds because of it. Let me end by saying climate change is a problem. Climate change, carbon emissions, greenhouse gases, they are serious problems. They are going to cause erratic weather patterns. They may already be doing so. They're causing longer fire seasons. Now, some people, mostly on the right, think this is just a natural occurrence or it's due to the sun. Someone even sent me a book explaining, solar activity. And yes, solar activity does have a major impact on the planet. The planet also goes through cycles, and there are a lot of issues around whether or not climate change is man-made or isn't. But I will tell you this. I am not a scientist. I am not an expert. I can only defer to the scientists. While I completely understand, 500 years ago, a man was persecuted and prosecuted because he believed that the earth revolved around the sun and not the other way around, because consensus isn't always accurate. Science constantly proves itself wrong to better understand the world. And it was, a couple hundred years ago, people used to drink mercury. Well, they would actually rub mercury ointments on their skin to try and cure certain diseases. And while technically, the mercury would kill the bacteria, the hope was that it would kill the bacteria faster than it killed you. So the point is, the things we know today will likely change. It's possible that we come to a better understanding about how climate change actually happens. Maybe it's solar activity, maybe it isn't. For the time being, many scientists believe it is the general accepted consensus that carbon emissions, methane, water vapor, etc., are contributing to climate change, and humans play a role in that. I have no grounds as a layman to challenge that, okay? What I do know is that these people are nuts. The simple solution is, instead of screeching about the end of the world coming, which it never does, calm down, assess the problem, incentivize the market, tell people to develop new technologies, have the universities do research, provide government options. But we have to take a slow approach to figure out how to change this. Otherwise, we just end up with a bunch of dead people because they want to shut down carbon emissions. The point is, look, I'm not saying all the scientists are right. I don't know. That's the problem. I don't know. I can only go on what the authorities are saying, and the authorities aren't always correct. But until there is a general change in scientific consensus, I will abide by what that is, even though consensus isn't science. If most of the scientists are saying, here's what we think, and there are many who say it's not, I defer to the authority on this one. The same goes for gender. All the people trying to claim it's not real, sorry, you don't get to play that game. I understand science isn't always correct. It's not. In fact, that's what's awesome about science. We prove ourselves wrong. But for the time being, I don't know what you want me to do other than defer to the experts. I'm not going to cherry pick and choose. I'm going to defer to the community on all of these issues. So I'll leave it there. This one was long, but stick around. Next segment's coming up at 1 p.m. Hope you're all having a wonderful Sunday. It's Sunday, right? I can't tell. Anyway, I will see you all at 1 p.m. on this channel. Thanks for hanging out.